Hey, how you doing? Welcome back to Rise Records. I'm Riley and you're listening to the podcast where I delve into my favorite records and explain the stories behind them. Today, I've got something very special lined up as I'm looking into Kind of Blue, Miles Davis' 1959 masterpiece. A record that didn't just change jazz, but changed the way we think about sound, space, and what it means to be timeless. Now, this album has to be one of my favorite albums of all time, and I'll tell you why. See, I come from a very musical family where jazz is pretty much the number one genre. I grew up surrounded by not only jazz musicians, but also with some of the best music that defined the genre. Everyone from Louis Armstrong to Dizzy Gillespie, Oscar Peterson to Miles Davis. Bebop and swing is such a big part of my life. My grandparents played it, my aunt and uncles played it. I even played it before I properly discovered rock and roll at the ripe age of 15. I guess you could say it's in my blood. So, around about 5 years or so ago, when I put on Kind of Blue for the first time and really listened to it, it felt sort of familiar to me. I knew the music, and I knew the feeling that came with it. The cool calmness of Miles Davis spoke to me in ways a record up until that point never had done before. So, without any further ado, let's get into Kind of Blue. I'll start by setting the scene. It's 1959. America is on the cusp of the 1960s. Rock and roll is shaking up teenagers. The civil rights movement is gaining momentum. And in the world of jazz, something seismic is brewing. Bebop had dominated the 1940s. Fast, virtuistic, and complex. Charlie Parker and Dizzy Gillespie had pushed musicians to their technical limits. But by the late 50s, some artists, Miles Davis among them, were asking, what if we slowed things down? What if we left more space? Miles had already been at the center of several revolutions. Cool jazz with Birth of the Cool in 1949, hard bop with Walkin', and modal experiments with Milestones in 1958. But he wasn't done innovating. He was searching for something purer, simpler, and more open. Something that let the musicians breathe. That idea of space and freedom would become Kind of Blue. If you wanted to build the perfect jazz band, you couldn't do better than the one Miles assembled for Kind of Blue. Let me do a quick roll call. So you've got Miles Davis on the trumpet, the visionary, the architect. John Coltrane on tenor sax, he's intense, searching, already pushing towards the spiritual sounds he'd later perfect on I Love Supreme. Then there's Cannonball Adderley on alto sax. He's soulful, grounded, full of blues and full of joy. We have Bill Evans on piano, who's introspective, impressionistic, a student of Debussy as much as Duke Ellington. Then we've got Paul Chambers on bass. He's the foundation. He is melodic and he's sure. Then Jimmy Cobb on drums, understated but driving, the real heartbeat of these sessions. And on one track, Freddie Freeloader, pianist Wynton Kelly takes over for Bill Evans, bringing a bluesier, more percussive feel. This group recorded the entire album in just 2 sessions, March the 2nd and April 22nd, 1959 at Columbia's 30th Street studio in New York City. 2 sessions. No rehearsals, barely any written music. Miles simply gave the musicians sketches, scales, modes, a few notes of direction, and what emerged was just magic. Before Kind of Blue, most jazz was based on chord changes, rapid, intricate progressions that musicians would navigate at lightning speed. But Miles wanted something different. He wanted to explore modal jazz, a system based not on chords but on scales or modes. Instead of having to react to complex harmonic changes, musicians could explore melodies and textures within a single mode, stretching out, taking their time, finding emotion in space rather than density. Miles once said, "When you go this way, you can go on forever." And that's exactly what Kind of Blue does. It feels somewhat infinite. Every listen reveals new shades, new colors. Bill Evans described it beautifully in the original album liner notes. There is a Japanese visual art in which the artist is forced to be spontaneous. The brush must move once and for all time. This conviction that directness is the most meaningful aspect of creation is the reason each of these performances is unique. It wasn't about perfection, it was about truth, captured in the moment. Okay, let's do it track by track. We're going to start with So What, perhaps the most famous jazz piece ever recorded. It begins with Paul Chambers' bass, answered by Bill Evans' piano, an almost call and response, like a conversation between two friends. There's a moment, just a few seconds into So What, when the bass line walks up and the piano answers, and you realize you're about to step into something eternal. Then the horns enter, stating that iconic two-note motif, almost saying, so what? The song alternates between two modes, D Dorian and E flat Dorian. That's it, 2 scales. But in those narrow confines, the band creates a universe. Miles' solo is cool and restrained. Coltrane's follows with sheets of sound, restless and searching. Cannonball brings in warmth and soul, and all the while Jimmy Cobb's cymbals shimmer underneath, light as breath. It's not just a song, it's a statement, a declaration that jazz could be about simplicity, and that simplicity could be profound. Next comes Freddie Freeloader, the blues heart of the album. Here, Wynton Kelly replaces Bill Evans on piano, as I mentioned before, and his touch changes everything. It's funkier, more traditional, more grounded in the 12-bar blues sense. Miles' muted trumpet sings, Cannonball's solo dances, Coltrane stretches the blues until it's almost abstract. It's named after a character who used to hang around Miles' gigs, someone who never paid and just soaked it all in. Maybe that's the secret. Kinda Blue is for the freeloader in all of us, those who just want to listen, those who just want to feel, and those who just want to take it in. Blue and Green is the album's most mysterious piece. It's just 5 minutes of pure introspection. Miles is often credited as the composer, but many historians, and Bill Evans himself, believe that Evans wrote most of it. Whoever wrote it, the result is haunting. The harmony floats unresolved. The mood is melancholy, almost sacred. Miles' trumpet sounds like a voice from another room, almost another dimension, echoing across time. It's not just jazz, it's impressionism. Monet in sound. All Blues swings in 6/8 time, a lifting, hypnotic groove built on a simple blues progression. But again, Miles transforms the familiar. The mode is G Mixolydian, giving it an open, airy feeling. This track feels like a long summer evening, the horns weaving in and out, the rhythm section carrying the pulse like a heartbeat, and Cannonball's solo really shines here. It's joyful and it's fluid. Bill Evans' comping underneath is masterful, always supportive. If So What is the head of this album, then All Blues is truly the heart. And then we arrive at Flamenco Sketches, the closer, the coda, the drift into forever. The musicians move through 5 modes, each like a new landscape. There's no set structure. Each soloist decides when it's time to move on. It's freedom in its purest musical form. Miles leads gently, like a guide. Coltrane's solo is spiritual and exploratory. Evans' piano evokes Spain, impressionism, and silence itself. When the final note fades, you're left suspended, like the world has slowed down, just for a moment, and you understand why this album never grows old. Kind of Blue wasn't just a hit record, it became the best-selling jazz album of all time, over 5 million copies sold and counting. It's been inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame, preserved in the Library of Congress, and cited by everyone from Herbie Hancock to the rock band Radiohead as a touchstone. But its real legacy isn't in awards, it's in influence. You can hear its fingerprints in film scores, hip-hop samples, and ambient music. Artists like Robert Glasper and Kendrick Lamar have all drawn from its modal openness and emotional honesty. And perhaps, most importantly, Kind of Blue showed that jazz could be simple but infinite, accessible but profound. Miles once said, "Don't play what's there, play what's not there." That's the heart of Kind of Blue. That's what makes it timeless. More than 60 years later, Kind of Blue still sounds like the future. It's an album you can study or simply live inside. You can analyze every mode, every solo, or just let it wash over you like water, like memory. It's not just music, it's a mood, a meditation, a moment that never ends. And that's all I've got time for this episode of Rise Records. If you enjoyed this, please feel free to share it with a fellow jazz lover. I really hope you'll join me again next week, as I'll be discussing Bruce Springsteen's 1982 masterpiece, Nebraska, to coincide with both the expanded edition of the album coming out and the movie Deliver Me From Nowhere starring Jeremy Allen White. I hope you all have a good week, and until the needle drops again, go ahead and put on Kind of Blue. Close your eyes and let Miles take you there.